Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I appreciate your patience and we're back and full steam ahead. I have a bunch of great guests lined up for you guys in the next coming months and I'm really pumped about it. Most of them are brand new, but some of them are some of your favorite guests that I'm having back to check in to see how they're doing a few years later, see what they've implemented, see how things have changed, and how their business has grown since I've talked to them last. And now that we're back, I decided that I want to give you guys maximum value out of this podcast. I know that breaking up the show into 30-minute segments always left you guys wanting more. So I'm going to give it to you. From now on, we're going to be doing full-length episodes. I tried to do the mini episode thing, but you know us welders, all we want to do is talk. So those episodes that were supposed to be short 15, 20-minute episodes ended up being an hour or more. So you know what? I'm just going to let you have it all. But in return, I'm going to want to talk to more of you guys. Now, I totally understand that doing an interview isn't for everybody, and I totally get that. But I know most of you have some hilarious job site stories that the rest of us would love to hear. So you know what? I want to hear them. I want to hear all about the shenanigans that you've experienced over the years on the job sites from all different types of trades. I also want to hear about the hard lessons you've learned. Those lessons that cost you a lot of money and that were painful to learn. As business owners, I know we all have them. And I'd like you to share them with the guys who are listening so they don't make the same mistakes. I think sharing these stories helps us all out and know that we're in this together. And hopefully some people will learn from it. So if you're up for sharing a short story or a full-length episode, or you want to recommend somebody, let me know. Head on over to weldingbusinessowners.com and click the book a call button on there. That'll take you to the Google Calendar of all the times that I get set up to sit down with you guys. Or send me an email, kevin@jmwfabrication.com. I look forward to talking with you and putting out episodes that you guys want to hear. Hey guys, welcome to the Welding Business Owners Podcast, where our podcasts are late, but our bids are on time. I'm your host, Kevin with JMW Fabrication. Today, we've got Aaronschaffer from Wilson Products. Aaron is the Vice President of Wilson Products, and he breaks down everything you want to know about an independent gas distribution company. From products to gases to all the questions that you guys emailed in to me, I asked them, and we've got some answers. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. Aaron's a great friend of ours. Wilson Products is a huge sponsor of the Fabricator Olympics. I've wanted to sit down with him for a while and ask him all the questions that I never got to ask anybody about the gases side of things. So this is it. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys like this, give me a 5-star review and share the show with somebody who you think that it could help. And without any further ado, here's Aaron from Wilson Products. So Aaron, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I know it's been a long time in the making. I just really appreciate it. Yeah.
It has, man. For the listeners out there, Aaron's been a huge part of the Fabricator Olympics of just, networking and getting people involved and marketing and just, generally just stepping up in an awesome way with Wilson Products, the company that he works for. And I wanted to have you on because I think that as small business owners, there's a lot of questions that we have about, between the big gas distributors and the small gas distributors, and people love one and hate the other, and some don't have a difference. But I have a couple questions about how the whole industry works, and maybe you could just shed some a light on, from the independent distributors' point of view.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any kind of questions for sure. This is, I'm super passionate about it, obviously. Tying together different manufacturers into the Fabricators Olympics has been amazing. I think, both for the event and for the manufacturers as well. So getting exposure and a partnership on their end, I know they've been all super pleased with it. So,
Awesome.
it's been awesome. Yeah, heck yeah.
So what is it that so give me a little bit of a history of with you and Wilson Products and where you started and what do you do today?
Yeah. So I was never a welder. So I got into this industry kind of by chance, right? I've known the owners of Wilson Products, compressed gas company, all my life, pretty much since I was a teenager. I grew up in a family business. We actually, I was the fourth generation of an appliance repair company. We serviced and sold Maytag washers and Whirlpool, Amana, all kinds of different brands. We did warranty work, full turnkey mom and pop appliance store. So that was pretty much my life for a very, very long time. Um, I got introduced to the owners of Wilson Products simply by fixing their appliances throughout all those years, and they come to understand my work ethic and my sense of urgency. And we built a really, really strong relationship throughout that course of better half of 2 decades. Um, so I started getting a little bit run down from the appliance industry. It was really a rat race. I was doing 10 to 12 service calls a day. Over the course of my career there, I did about 26,000 service calls
Wow.
in many, many different homes, and I was very good at it. And so I was getting, like I said, run down. And I was 30 years old, and I'm like, I got to do something potentially different. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in this trade pretty much the rest of my life and just be a service tech, which would have been fine.
Hmm.
But I saw the owners of Wilson Products, and I knew them pretty well, and I was very intrigued about their business. And the one time working on their washer, I talked to them about potentially doing, looking into further about coming on board with those guys. And that was August of 2013 when I got hired by Wilson Products. So it was a big step in my career, right? I'm setting behind everything I knew and going into something
Yeah.
I have no clue about. I mean, I used some nitrogen. I did some soldering and brazing at that point. I was very hands on, mechanically inclined. I can use a tape measure probably better than most kids coming out of Botex sometimes, right? But
That's a story for another time.
yeah, exactly. So, um, yeah, I mean, I started filling cylinders. I was rolling cylinders and filling mixed gases, oxygen, CO2. I filled a lot of propane.
Yeah.
Um, I started getting a little bit trained here and there. So I got into like FDA training to learn how to fill oxygen cylinders to medical standards, right? And go through the SOPs and make sure we were doing things the right way.
Hmm.
Started doing deliveries, small ones, under 1,000 pounds, and then also doing cylinder repairs as well. So I was like revalving cylinders and paint and blasting cylinders, very mechanical stuff,
Hmm.
um, which I mean, I'm a hands-on guy. I really, really enjoyed that time, and I got to learn the ins and outs, the pressures and weights of liquids compared to gas, and why and how we fill things and the way we do, and the checking of the cylinders and all that sort of stuff. Right, I learned what all those marks are on all the cylinders and what the importance of them are, and so if I would have just jumped into sales, it would have been a little bit harder, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so I did that for about a year and a half or so before there was an opportunity to come inside to help at the counter. Right. Again, it was an uphill battle for me. I didn't know what TIG rod was or what it was used for, or MIG wire or flux core or metal core. Like I didn't know anything. Right. So there was a lot to learn, but I
Yeah.
wanted to learn. That was, I think, the biggest part of the puzzle for me was I wanted to understand the ins and outs of this stuff.
Hmm.
So at that point, they actually offered to send me to welding school, which I did. I went to actually 2 night classes, and I got to learn the ins and outs. And man, that was interesting. Um, from somebody that never welded to turning on a stick machine and stick welding for the first time, I'm like, I don't know if this is for me or not, but but I started to learn
Sink
it.
or swim.
Yeah, right. So, but I needed to know how this stuff works if I'm going to sell it, right?
Yeah.
And know what you guys do inside and out, and be competent and capable of doing what you do to a certain
Hmm.
extent. I'm not going to build a bridge or handrails like you guys do, but That's you guys are the professionals. I'm just here to help you, make sure I understand, get you the right stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, and so I spent quite a few years in sales. Did my night classes. I went to a ton of trainings. I went to Miller Electric for trainings, from their Miller Masters program all the way through Hobart Filler Metals programs, specialty alloy stuff, and then I went to like Lincoln Electric multitude of times for all different types of product training for distributors, robotics training. I went with some end users. You name it, I've been in the class most likely.
Nice.
I just recently finished up a advanced GMAW class that Miller piloted here at their new training facility in the Northeast, which was really cool. So got to share my feedback on maybe what could be different, what other content could be part of it, that sort of stuff. It was kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So sales, I got into operations a little bit, and then purchasing. I did purchasing for a lot of years at Wilson Products, and then ultimately ended up being asked to be the vice president of the company, kind of overseeing our outside sales force, inside sales force, and handling our vendors. So
Nice.
yeah,
So
um,
so you know all about from filling cylinders and rolling cylinders all the way up
yep,
to the highest end of the paper pushing.
that's right. Yep, involved in all kinds of stuff. Today I still load cylinders in people's cars, and I really love it.
Yeah.
But then we're involved in some pretty big decision making stuff too, in regards to what direction we're going in as a company, and what we're going to invest in next, or that sort of stuff too. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
It's a really cool.
Oh,
It's not ever the same thing every day, which is I wouldn't be able just to sit behind a desk all day long.
yeah, absolutely. Me neither.
Yep, yep,
So I put it out there on social media for a couple guys to ask some questions from you guys because you're different than the Airgas and the Praxair and the Lindy and every the other big gas companies. Couple smart ass questions out there like why aren't the distributors open on Saturdays? But I don't think we had to dive into that. But one of the questions that was asked was explain how small welding shops go about renting or owning their own gas cylinders and why some distributors don't accept competitor bottles.
yeah. That's a great question. Yeah. So that question comes up often. Um, uh, so when it comes to gas cylinders, every company themselves have their own policies, right? In
Hmm.
regards to either owning or renting. Um, so I can speak for Wilson Products specifically. I can tell you that we're a family-owned distributor. We're in a buying group, and we have the buying power as just kind of same level playing field as with the majors as well when it comes to cylinders and a lot of the hard goods and everything else, right? But
Hmm.
um, specifically on cylinders, we buy the cylinders from the cylinder manufacturer, and we sell and we rent cylinders. Um, a lot of my competition, whether it be family owned or it being a major corporate owned company, they tend to not to rent cylinders out, right? They have, or I'm sorry, to sell cylinders outright. Um, they have lease programs and they have rental programs.
Hmm.
When it comes to anything over typically a 122, they own the assets, and they take on all the costs that are involved with hydro testing or valving or paint and blast, filling and certification, bake outs, all that sort of stuff that goes along behind the scenes that you guys don't see. Um, in regards to why, I don't necessarily know. I never worked for an Airgas or a Lindy, but I can tell you, from a consumer standpoint, regardless of working at a distributor or not, um, from a selling standpoint, I can prove an ROI on owning a cylinder, right?
Hmm.
If you can find a distributor that'll sell them to you. They're expensive and it's an investment, right? It's just like buying a welding machine or a car. If you're buying a bunch of cylinders, it can get pretty pricey pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um, but typically, when you look at your rental agreement bills, or your rental agreement, or your lease agreement, there's typically, when you start figuring all that out, what it costs month over month, year over year, there's typically a break even point. Um, and I try and explain this to every customer that walks into my store, and make sure my guys understand to explain it to every customer that comes into my store of what they're actually getting themselves into, right? You know, um, renting cylinders is great for especially big companies. Um, but we're talking about mom and pop, little small welding business owners, right? And you probably aren't going anywhere. You got a couple 75-25s in the shop, a couple argons, maybe a trimix or two here and there, and some 90-10, whatever, oxygen, acetylene. All that stuff adds up to be quite a bit of money if you're paying rent or lease and you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
If your 5 year plan is to be in business in 5 years, I'd highly consider at least looking at potentially buying those cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
Because from my experience right now, the way costs look, it's about 18 months of rental is what you're paying to pay for a cylinder, right?
Okay.
There about thereafter, um, that cylinder's already been paid for in rent. If you could have bought it out right at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's an upfront investment. Um, so the way that we like to do it is you can either rent or you can own the cylinder from us right off the bat. If you decide to rent at any point, if you decide you don't want to rent anymore, you can buy that cylinder from us. So it's just pushing some paper around at that point because you already have possession of the cylinder.
Yeah.
It's just basically me writing an invoice, you paying a credit card, and now you own that asset. So
Awesome.
yeah, um, I really highly recommend and I tell customers too, um, cylinders are expensive. Look on Marketplace. If you have a distributor that's willing to work with you, and they're able to facilitate hydro tests for you, or maybe paint and blast or a valve, look on Marketplace and potentially find yourself a great deal. I mean, I've done it in the past when through COVID, there were some supply shortage issues and lead times had come out on cylinders. And I'm like, man, we need cylinders, and I'm like, I'm looking on Marketplace to buy cylinders because our inventory is depleting, because we're
Yeah.
getting new customers. And I'm like, this is crazy. Nothing's coming in. Um, but, and then we would send them out for hydro and do everything
Yeah.
else that we needed to do.
The distributor is looking on Facebook
Yeah.
Marketplace for cylinders.
It was crazy. It was crazy. I couldn't get 60 cubic foot cylinders for the life of me, um, we had to do something, you
Yeah.
know. It's there's well, you might have heard like the helium crunch, or CO2
I
shortages,
remember
or
that.
these
Yeah.
these things that come and go, right? It happens with steel supply too from time to
Mm-hmm.
time on cylinders. Maybe the factory is not running at full capacity because of, like, through COVID, right? Or uh, uh, high demand, or machine broke down or whatever it may be. There's only a few places that actually manufacture cylinders, and if something's wrong with them, then lead times can go up way out.
Yeah.
So we try and prepare for the worst always and make sure we always have what we need. And we weren't necessarily taking some new customers at that point because we knew we didn't have quite the cylinders to supply to a new customer, but we wanted to make sure we had what we had on our dock to be able to supply current customers.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just the kind of the pains that we feel in the back end of stuff from time to time.
Yeah.
Propane tanks was one a couple years ago too, 100-pound
Mm.
propane tanks. And during COVID, all these restaurants started doing outside dining, and everyone wanted propane heaters,
Yeah.
and everybody. And to get 20-pound or 100-pound propane tanks was just about dang impossible because everyone
Yeah.
bought them up to supply this whole new propane industry that wasn't there before.
Yep.
So yeah.
So explain to me, where does the what does the chain of supply look like from, like, where does the gas come from? Do you guys separate out the gas on site, or what does that chain of command look like?
So like specifically for the gases, right? There's a multitude of different air separation plants that we could potentially do business with. We've chose to partner with Air Products. So Air Gas, Lindy, they typically have their own air separation plants. A lot of places will buy from Air Gas or Lindy in bulk. and they'll get the delivery of liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid argon to their fill plants. So we have a big fill plant. It's just was redone in 2019. So everything's computer controlled. We have all the recipes for all the gases in there. Everything's checked and double checked and triple checked and tested. But so you know we have gauges, telemetry on our tanks outside, and once the tanks are starting to get lower, the air products will come and fill them. And at that point, we have cryogenic pumps outside that pump all that gas into the building, as we need once we have cylinders hooked up to our lines. So we
Hmm.
don't separate our own air. We buy the liquid from the air separation plant, comes right to us, certified with the specs of that particular load, and we pump it right into from a closed system into the cylinders after a vacuum. Right, we
Hmm.
vacuum every cylinder, we vent every cylinder, and then we start to fill thereafter to make sure we have good, solid, quality product coming out the door.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know like what is the gas like? How do you like? Do you know how the like air products separates out the different types of gas?
I don't know the scientific how they're able to get different boiling points of different gases to be able to separate them. I never really dove
Interesting.
down into that world too much, although I find it super intriguing and
Yeah, me too. That's why
ultimately at some
that
point
was
or
my
another,
question.
yeah, sure, like yeah, sure, you know you got different boiling points of different gases, and um, they're able to somehow separate them, and at one of these facilities and pull the nitrogen, oxygen, argon right out,
Yeah,
and separate them, which is truly amazing. They've been doing it a long, long, long time. I just
yeah,
don't necessarily know the ins and outs of it.
that's incredible. Yeah, I've always wondered that because a buddy of mine works for, I believe it's Air Products, and he tried to explain to me one time, and it was just like mind boggling, like how far down they had to freeze things to get things out. I'm like, it's just crazy. So, what is like, what is what does a recertification look like for a cylinder?
Okay, yeah, great question. So recertifications on cylinders in today's world happens two different ways. It's your typical hydro test. So when you bring a cylinder into my store and I check the date on it, um, I'm looking for a couple of things, right? Um, Almost every steel cylinder. Let's talk about steel. There's a difference between steel and aluminum cylinders, right?
Okay.
So steel cylinders are hydro tested for a DOT date of 10 years, right? If there's a star behind it. If there is no star behind that stamp, it's only for 5 years.
Hmm.
So almost every cylinder you're going to see is going to have a star behind the last test date. Very seldom are you going to see a 5 year. Now, they are out there. Typically, they're older cylinders for the most part. So hydro tests are good for typically 10 years, and then thereafter they have to go out and get retested. Um, we used to do that in house before I was there, so I never got to see the operation firsthand. But it came to the point where there's a lot involved with it, right? There's a lot of equipment, manpower, some liability issues. You got DOT, and we weren't doing enough volume to justify the cost that was involved to be able to do that in house. So we've outsourced our hydro testing to companies that specifically do hydro testing for a very, very long time. And it's basically a business within a business, right? You know, we do what we do well, and they do what they do well, and we have a partnership where we work together, and we send them truckloads of cylinders to be tested, and this one less thing that we have to worry about on our end.
Mm. Okay.
So when you bring me a cylinder, it's out of test. We mark that cylinder as we cannot put it online. That's got to go out and be serviced at that point. So when it gets to the hydro testing facility, um, depends on how they do things. They can either pull the valve and do the hydro, or there's UT testing as well. So it's like an ultrasonic test, like an X-ray essentially. They can measure cylinder wall thickness depending on what the DOT number on the shoulder of the cylinder says it's supposed to be, and they can check it with an X-ray essentially, and determine what that cylinder looks like today. So we can't see what's on the inside of a cylinder, only what's on the outside. There's certain things that'll disqualify a cylinder from the outside, and then obviously cylinder wall thickness is another important factor in that. And that's what the purpose of those tests are. Determine if that cylinder is still safe to be filled up to 2,000 or more psi. Because we have a cylinder that failed hydro test in our shop, that the whole side of the cylinder wall blew out during testing, and from the outside of the cylinder you couldn't tell that there was anything wrong with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
The paint looked perfect. You wouldn't know anything different other than it just being another oxygen cylinder.
Wow.
On the inside, however, somehow moisture had gotten inside of that cylinder at some point and completely eroded, essentially corroded the inside of that cylinder to the point where it wasn't capable of holding 2,000 or more psi anymore, and it blew the cylinder completely apart.
Interesting.
That's an extremely violent thing to happen.
Now, do cylinders, is it a normal thing for cylinders to have the inside of the wall erode away, or is it just testing for, specific, like, hey, this one was kind of abused, they let the valve open, and you would never be able to tell from the outside?
I tell you, we send tens of thousands of cylinders out to be hydro tested every year, and very, very few come back that don't pass. And they're for a multitude of different reasons, right? Can be an arc mark, or a welding arc on a cylinder that'll completely close it out. It can be in a fire that'll close it out completely, or cylinder wall thickness will definitely cancel a cylinder out to the point where it can't be used anymore.
Okay.
Very, very few, but you just never know what a cylinder's life looked like. It could have been laying in somebody's field for the last 20 years, and
Yeah.
somebody repainted it, and next thing you know, it's someone's trying to put it back in service, and
Goes boom.
yeah, we don't want that. Yeah.
How many? What's the psi that they test the hydro testing to?
I'm not entirely sure what the hydro test, as we don't do that in house. We leave that to the specialists that focus on that. I'm not 100% sure what they pressure them up to. I'm sure it's quite a bit over what we fill them to.
Yeah. What are some of the things that go into the prices of gas? Like, are there things that really drive the prices up? Like, is it kind of like oil, where it's a market that drives it up? And like the helium shortage, I knew that there's a like what kind of factors go into like the price of the gases and what causes a shortage?
Yeah, so typically, like oxygen, nitrogen, and argon are pretty standard and across the board, for the most part, pretty stable in price. When we talk about when we get a delivery, the cost is relatively small. And what you look at how much product is in, like, say, an oxygen cylinder that you guys are buying, like a 200 size oxygen cylinder. The cost of actual oxygen in that cylinder is very little. But there's a lot of things that are involved with what that cost to the end user actually is, right? Now we talk about hydro test costs, paint and blast, cylinder valve, cylinder, the labor to fill, the equipment to fill, the equipment to test. There's so much involved, cost wise when it comes to filling a cylinder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what more so drives the cost of your standard gases for the most part. And when I say standard, you're talking about typically nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. Helium's a bit different. Costs are much, much more compared to the standard gases that are getting delivered and pulled out of an air separation plant. And then the complexity of the testing that's involved when you get into certain gases, any kind of like laser application gases where there's parts per million, the testing equipment goes way up. The analytical part of all of that goes way up. The time involved to be able to get those things spot on goes way up, right? But you're talking about like just regular welding gas. A lot of the cost of the gas itself is typically in the labor and that's involved in all the fees that we have to pay to the state and the feds and everybody else under the sun. You guys know how that works. you know, so yeah, it's a highly regulated industry for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yep.
Um, how do you guys, as a small independent distributor, compete with the larger ones? And what does that look like? Like, what are some of the advantages that, like, from buying from a smaller company versus the bigger one?
So you're pretty familiar with Wilson Products. I would say although we're only one location distributor, we have 30 employees. We have a state of the art fill plant. I wouldn't call us necessarily small per se, right? Um, you know,
Independent, I should.
yeah,
How about
we're not
that?
we're not
Is
necessarily,
that
yeah, we're not buying already packaged gas cylinders from another major, right? We're doing
mm,
everything in house, and but when it comes to the competitiveness part of it, we're in a buying group. It's called the Independent Welding Distributors Co-op. We've been in that for the last, I'd probably say 7 or 8 years, and that's really opened up a lot of doors for us. So that buying group collaboratively together between all the independent distributors that are in it and the manufacturers. I believe we're larger than actually Praxair. Um,
wow.
Combined together if you talk about all the independents across the country that are in this buying group and their locations. In fact, actually, one of the independents in the buying group actually has their own air separation plant that came online a year or two ago, and that was a huge deal. They might be the only one that actually
Hmm.
built their and have their own air separation plant. It was a kind of a co-op. A couple of different distributors went together and did it together, but it's privately owned, which was super awesome to see. The independents are growing, right?
Yeah.
And we're able to be competitive with the big guys because of we've collectively came together to fight for price. You know,
Heck yeah.
yeah. So yeah, when it comes to like gases or hard goods, uh, we take a lot of pride in really working hard with our vendors to make sure that we're up to snuff and up to par with, and we have the same pricing. There's different price brackets for say Miller Electric or for ESOB or for whoever else, and a lot of it has to do with the amount of sales and different stocking requirements and that sort of stuff. And we try and get into all of those programs to make sure that we're the best we can be for our customers, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. What do you think is the most challenging part of being independent from the other distributors? Let's say a Praxair or something like that.
I mean, we're footing the bill for everything. Like something goes wrong, I don't have another plant to go to
Mm,
to pull something from. I don't, if my oxygen rack's not filling that day, you know, I can't go to another location or another place to be able to rely on. Um, so don't get me wrong, like we've done all as much as we could possibly do from an independent perspective to be able to have safeguards in place to be able to prevent those types of things from screwing up our day, right? Because the
yeah.
last thing we want is a customer, whether it be a customer that just done business with us for the first time or somebody who's been with us for 30 years, to leave them high and dry. That's never, that's the worst place we could possibly be. And we make sure that we have ample stock and inventory. We buy way more cylinders than we need to, just to make sure that there's stock on the shelf in case a cryogenic pump goes down or a vacuum pump breaks or whatever it may be. Redundancy and backups is critical.
Yeah.
We put in a huge generator that we're able to actually run our whole facility on. Um, Thank God we did. The neighbor next to us, the garbage disposal company, dumped their dumpster next door and never, well, dumped it into their truck, never put it back down, and he drove out the parking lot and ripped the power lines right up next to us, and it was enough to burn the lines into our building.
Oh,
And
dang.
yeah, so if we put that generator maybe 6 months prior to, and thank God we were able to run the entire plant for a couple of weeks, in fact, off generator power, because that would have been a mess, you know.
Dang, that's
Yeah, for
awesome.
sure. Yep,
Way to look ahead.
yep, no doubt about it.
Nice, man. Um, what do you think are some of the most common misconceptions people have about welding gases or the distribution process?
Oh, misconceptions. Um, I'm not entirely sure what the um, I can tell you from my perspective, the independent can absolutely be competitive on both hard goods and gases.
Hmm.
Um, if done properly, right? Um, I take a lot of pride to make sure that my pricing is in line with everyone else, and even more so to have some special deals that you probably can't find anywhere else.
Oh, we know
So I don't.
about those deals.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So I
You've
really
hooked us
work.
up. You've hooked us up plenty, and not even you, just Wilson Products. Even before I was dealing with you, totally hooked us up on some deals that I couldn't get anywhere else. I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
That might be a misconception in itself, right? You might, a lot of guys might think, oh man, I can just probably get these, grinding wheels off Amazon, or this machine off of the XYZ website, or whatever. They give me a free hood
Hmm.
or whatever. Man, if you got the right distributor working with you, have those conversations and the right guy will get super creative to make it make sense for everyone involved.
Yeah.
That brick and mortar store needs to be there to be able to help you guys, and you're helping us too. It's kind of a it's a strong relationship that most distributors hopefully can have, and there's a lot involved. Um, you know I'm able to facilitate things like having Miller Electric or Lincoln Electric reps come out to or help service, and all these things. Buying online doesn't really necessarily afford you those opportunities for that kind of stuff to happen.
Well,
you know
it's funny because even dealing with other independent resellers before I would dealt with you guys. So like my like just for everybody, I haven't always dealt with Aaron. I haven't always dealt with Wilson. I before I dealt with you, I dealt with somebody else in your company, and he was great. But it's funny because you always think that the independent guys are going to be more expensive, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they're really competitive. But even when I was dealing with Joe, you know not pulling any special favors, he'd come in at less than you could buy it for on Amazon or any other website on the internet. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is their everyday price. Like, I should really give more thought to it. You know what I mean? And I think you guys are the place that opened up my eyes to, like, I don't have to sacrifice paying more money to help the local independent guys when it comes to like the welding gases.
yeah, no, 100%. There's certain things I may not be great at, and I try and tell my customers right up front. If they have an inquiry in regards to a particular product, oh, that's I don't necessarily buy direct from them. There's far and few between these days, thankfully, that I don't have direct access to.
Hmm.
But there definitely are some brands that I have to go through third party or whatever, through wholesale, and I may not have the best service or support or even price at that point. It's not everything, but it's a very small little part. But if I go online and I'm like, oh man, I can buy this whatever widget for you know quite a bit less than you can for me, I'm going to tell you that. I'm not going to
Yeah.
try and or maybe we can make it up somewhere else. If you need this thing fast, maybe I can help you with it. And or there's going to be shipping involved and all these other little things that you don't necessarily think about. Um, and then or maybe we can make it up, like I said, on the gas or abrasives or whatever else down the road too. Hopefully the bigger picture is it's all going to line up in the right place.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know, so that's what happens when you start building relationships, right? Understanding from my perspective, it's important for me to understand your business and understand what your goals are, and try and help you achieve them, because
Hmm.
I'm not in business without you guys,
Yeah.
you know. So I'm going to work as hard, if not harder, in certain circumstances to make sure you guys are successful as possible.
Heck
That's
yeah,
bottom
man.
line. So, I want to see it. You guys become
Yeah,
friends.
that's right.
Yep.
That's what happened here.
Yep. No doubt about it.
Like, what is the strangest request that you've gotten from a customer?
Strangest request, man.
Yeah. Is there
Well,
like a weird application for gases or something crazy that's off the wall that you were able to facilitate selling somebody something?
I mean, I had a customer, um, probably about a year or so ago, wanted welding wire, but not for welding. They were using it for a specific application, and the tolerances on their, I believe it was 062 welding wire that they'd used in the past, um, had to be more stringent. I mean, it was plus and minus like next to nothing
Hmm.
on the diameter of the wire. And AWS says 70S6 is 70S6 035, right? And there's a tolerance to that, what the chemical composition is. That's why some wires run different than others. Some even the wire diameter itself, right? So this guy, he wanted to buy quite a bit of aluminum in a specific diameter, and for their application, and boy, did I have to look up and down for manufacturing process, that was within those tolerances to find a wire, that met their needs, right? So I mean, that was kind of an oddball, uh, specific application that they needed
Yeah.
something, and I went to the ends of the earth to try and we ultimately ended up doing it. Um, we found a wire from a manufacturer that was, they had their tolerances so tight that coming out of the factory, they could definitely tell you that yes, it's going to be,
Hmm.
within, you know what they needed. So that was pretty cool.
Cool.
I mean, we've done welding wire. All over the place. I mean, we talk about Inconels and Hastelloys and copper nickels and power plant stuff to boilers to uh, aerospace to everything else under the sun. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things to try and figure out.
Hmm.
Is do you need military certs with this thing? Do what kind of specification of the weld wire? What's it going in for? All that sort of stuff. I love the nitty gritty part of trying to figure out what my customers' needs are for their application, and sourcing it as fast as possible at the best price I can.
Yeah.
You know,
What is what is the most expensive gas out there?
Expensive gas.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, helium for I guess for like welding business centers, right? The most
Or in
expensive.
general. Like I'm just genuinely
Yeah.
curious. Like, what is the most expensive type of gas out there?
So you get into like some of the rare earth stuff, like krypton and xenon and that sort of stuff. I mean, you're talking about over $10,000 a cylinder,
Wow.
for sure on some of that stuff. It gets really expensive. I don't know much about the semiconductor business. We don't really get into it too much, but I've had
Okay.
a very little bit of introduction to it. There's a company locally that does it very very well, and I've had a tour of their facility and learned a little bit about what they do. And man, that stuff gets wild. You know.
Krypton and xenon, huh?
Yep. Yep.
I don't think I've ever like Krypton sounds like something from like a Batman movie.
Yep. Exactly. 100%. Yep. So, yep. That stuff's using like semiconductors and typically for the most part, I mean, it's rare earth gases. Like, it's, I don't know how they are able to separate, even because there's such small minuscule amounts of that in our atmosphere, that they're able
Mm,
to separate that stuff, and the process to be able to do so is really really in depth.
wow.
Engineers and scientists involved kind of stuff. Yeah.
You don't want to mislabel that cylinder. Holy
No.
cow.
Nope. Definitely not. So I
So
can't say if it's the most expensive, but I can tell you they're very expensive.
yeah, yeah. It's something that you don't want to drop over.
No. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You definitely close the valve when you're done for the day.
Yeah. So besides your filling station like on site, what do you think that some of your advantages are at Wilson Products that to put you ahead of even other distributors in the area?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the biggest things is we're extremely passionate. We're family owned. We're into it, and we take a lot of pride in to not have to rely on our vendors all the time.
Hmm.
You know, we invest a lot of training, right, into our guys, and we take a lot of pride in that too. So, when it becomes the to weld process or repair, technical stuff, um, the difference you start to get into like aluminums and stainless steels and applications and gases and it starts to get pretty wonky and there's a lot of opinions out there and we just try to just know as much as we possibly can. So we take a lot of pride in training our guys, number one, both inside and outside sales force, um, to be here to help you guys. Um, and I'm sure our competition does that too. But we got some guys here that have been, I've been here 12 years. I have outside sales guys been there 15 years, 18 years. Our combined time in the welding field is, from a distributor standpoint, is a lot. The knowledge that's underneath that roof, and I have those guys to weigh on, and they have me to weigh on. When it comes to application, so very we like to pride ourselves in knowing as much as we possibly can, and
Hmm.
then we have the tools to be able to reach out to the manufacturers as well, right? We have great relationships with Lincoln Electric and Miller and ESAB and Hypertherm and everybody in between. You talk about power tools that we use, whether it be Evolution or Metabo and everybody else in between, service and support. Super super important stuff that you guys can't be without a tool that to get your job done, to make your customer happy, so they call you back. It's like this whole trickle down effect, and it all starts with the distributor being able to get what you need when you need it, and that's super
Yeah.
important to us. So we have a fill plant. We do as much as we possibly can in house. We have our own delivery crew. We deliver hard goods and gases on our trucks together, so you're not having a multitude of different trucks coming out to your shop for different things. A fully staffed, knowledgeable people. We are open Saturdays. Um,
Yes.
yep. So, and I tell you, it's a busy day, and I work the counter Saturdays every fifth week, and it's a lot of fun. Seeing new customers, helping
Yeah.
with the right machine, I love it. Yeah, I like working the counter for sure. You get to really figure out what your customers are making and building,
Yeah.
and are they in the shop doing a little weekend warrior stuff, are they are they working for somebody getting ready to go out on their own, or are they already on their own and they're getting in some pretty cool projects? I love seeing what you guys build. um, Amazing. But and then so that's one side of the coin. We have a demo room. We so we buy machines from both Miller, Lincoln, Hypertherm, even ESAB, uh, for demonstration purposes, right?
Mm.
We buy certified pre-owned machines that come with full warranties, that you're able to use their rebates on. We're able to sell the demo equipment after we demo them, and at a discount rate as well. We don't advertise that stuff online necessarily, but it's something that we do, and sometimes we come across some really really pretty impressive deals.
Yeah. That's how I got my Lincoln 360p. Was it 360 MP from you guys?
Yep.
I came in there looking for a pulse machine. I was really looking at the Millermatic 255, I think it was,
Mhm.
and it was like out the door. It was like the $5,800 range or something like that, 5,000 like $5,500 range. Maybe not out the door, but and then I walk in and there was the Lincoln 360, which it wasn't even on my radar because like it was, at that time it was probably $7,000.
Mhm.
But then I walked in and it had a sticker on it for $5,500.
Mhm.
So it was one of those things. It was a demo machine that went out. They had used it, barely used it, and I had seen it before, so it had been sitting there for like a few months actually, And this is when this was, probably right after COVID when machine prices started to really go high.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
you guys didn't advertise it. I didn't call about it, but it was sitting there on the floor for the price of the lower Miller, I got a better Lincoln for the exact same price. And I was like, well, that's a no brainer. Let's go ahead and buy that. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah,
So,
no, I've spent a lot of time throughout the last few years really working with the manufacturers to number one have machines in my store to be able to turn on and use them, right? So we have like a welding lab essentially. We have TIG, MIG, stick machines ready to go, hooked up. You can use whatever you want, and let's see if it's whatever's right, the best price for your application.
mhm.
And like you said, we sell those off. It gives us a little bit of an edge on our competition, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely want to be known as having a good deal. You know what I mean? Why would you not? Especially when there's so much competition in our market.
Hmm.
So we get machines from all over the place. We bought out a Miller's training facility 6-8 months ago. They were
I,
moving
re-
training facilities,
I remember
and we
that.
ended up yeah we I ended up sending a big truck down there, and we loaded up 28 welding machines from them that we had bought from their training lab. Um, and then we sold them with warranties to our customers, and
For smoking deals too. They were
they were it was
they were smoking deals. Like I wish I was looking for a machine at that time because I was like, you almost had me buying a machine when I didn't need it. I was like, dang, that's such a good price. Like maybe I do need that machine. No, no, you don't.
Yeah, I mean, we had big dynasties in stock. We had Continuum 500s in stock. I mean, big
Yeah.
boy machines. We had Delta Welds and Dimension 650s, and oh, we tried to make it easy for Miller, right? Miller makes life easy for us. We try and do the same for them. From a
Yeah.
distributor standpoint, we appreciate being a call to be able to have the opportunity to buy this equipment. We sell a lot of Miller stuff,
Hmm.
and that partnership is very strong today. And they thought of us when it came to those pieces of equipment to sell off. And when I got that call, I was like, well, we don't necessarily sell a whole lot of Continuums in a year, or we don't sell a whole lot of Dimension 650s in a year, but let's just make this easy. I'll give you a PO for everything, and we'll come down, and you guys don't have to worry about it. We'll figure it out from there.
Yeah.
Ironically, we sold almost everything within a couple weeks, but including the Dimension 650 and a Continuum 500s and everything else. But kind of a niche machines you're not going to see in most shops, but
Yeah.
they're out there for sure.
Nice.
So yeah,
Awesome, man. Well, I got one more question for you. What
yeah.
is your what are some of your favorite jobs or your favorite stories from the job that you've been in?
All right, yeah, I can tell you one specifically that really stands out. I made really good friends with the union pipe fitter, and throughout the years at working at Wilson Products, my friend George, and he had bought some equipment from us throughout the years. He had a Pipe Pro 400 on his truck. Um, he called me in a panic one day, maybe about 3-4 years ago. He was out on a job site in actually on a naval base in New Jersey, and his machine died. No more arc. It was done. And so he called me in a panic. He's like, they're getting ready to tell me I got to go home. I got my machine's not working. It's a union big pipe, 30-inch pipe job. They got 28 miles of it to lay, and um, he's not able to do what he needs to do on that job site that day. So he actually ended up renting one of the helpers trucks just to kind of get by and continue to stay on the job site. Um, but I immediately called my friends at Miller Electric, and ultimately ended up driving from Wilson Products in Easton, Pennsylvania to Swedesboro, New Jersey. I picked up a brand new Pipe Pro 400 that day for him. Drove it out to the job site, another 2 hours from Swedesboro. Dropped off the welder literally on an airstrip. Got it off with an excavator and put his broken one on the back of my pickup truck, and he was running within 5 hours. That
That's
was a
awesome.
really cool experience.
Heck
Going
yeah.
through the military security and driving down the runway with my truck and seeing. I got to see where like they stored the Hindenburg, like the blimp, I guess, whatever it was that caught on fire.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like the hangar, like where it was actually stored at, and it was just a really cool experience. And um, I didn't make anything from it. Like I just wanted to help my friend out, and I would
Yeah,
do that for anybody. I mean, you're all my friends, so like I want to see you do good, and that's what we do. Like I don't know, it's not necessarily about the money sometimes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it was fun. It was a cool experience. But yeah, I mean, I've been involved with a lot of cool different things over the years. I mean, from uh, planning and designing, and seeing different parts and pieces being implemented from handheld to automation, or schools being updated, and you name it, everything in between. I got to be a part of, and it's just really cool to know that some of the welding wire I've sold is on some major bridges that we drive across every single day, or some big buildings that you see in the skyline of Manhattan, or in a pipe over in New Jersey somewhere, carrying a massive amount of natural gas, and everything in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've sold welding wire to a customer who's building doors for United States embassies, and they're huge, ornate, bulletproof doors that are going overseas to United States embassies. Which, I mean, just be a part of that kind of stuff.
That's pretty badass.
You just never know what the phone call is going to be. You just never know.
That's pretty sweet. I want to make
Yeah,
some bulletproof doors.
yeah, the ornate ones. I mean, they were awesome.
I bet.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, Aaron, I appreciate your time. Is there anything you got for me?
I don't think so. I
Cool, man.
appreciate the opportunity to be on here. I'm really looking forward to the Fabricators Olympics again.
Yeah, me
And
too.
yeah, whatever we can do from my end to help facilitate and support that thing, I'm in.
I know you are. Absolutely,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, heck yeah,
So cool,
awesome,
buddy. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you. All
absolutely. Talk to you.
right, let's catch up soon.
Yep.
All right, see ya. So that's it for this episode, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it and really got a lot of value out of it. If you want to reach out to Aaron, I will throw Wilson's Products website and Aaron's actual email down below. Reach out to him if you guys need anything. They'll ship nationwide. Like he said, customer service is really where it's at. So if you like this show, please share it with somebody who you think would appreciate it. Leave me a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player. That really helps me out. And check back in 2 weeks for a brand new podcast episode. Until then, get out there, get it done, and get it invoiced.